better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the...
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. And today, guys and girls, I want to talk about how I went to build a 230 plus property portfolio, and how to scale a portfolio. So I guess at the start, I just wanted to go and buy property. I see so many people come to us on a daily basis and have the questions like, where's the next hotspot? How should I buy the greatest property? And all this sort of stuff. But when I do my sort of one-on-one coaching via a map session, and I look at people that I basically spend an hour looking over their position and talking about strategy, I see so often that a lot of people just go out there and buy properties, get themselves into a position where they're screwed up because they didn't have the right strategy, they didn't have the right planning, they didn't have the right systems, they didn't have the right processes, they didn't have the right procedures. So today I want to talk a little bit about that, because when I first started, I started with the end in mind. I didn't want to have to work. I didn't want to have to go and spend 40 years in a job, which I hated. I wanted to be able to live life on my terms and do what I want to do. So my goal wasn't about buying a certain property or get a property to do a certain task. I see so many times people come to me and they've bought properties and they're just all houses, or there's, I can see within 2 minutes as to where people are screwed up and what they can do to get out of there. It's like a very quick thing that I can do nowadays. Just looking at all the numbers on a piece of paper. But people quite often get screwed up because they're just focusing on their emotional aspect of it, and they don't have the greatest game plan, or they don't have the greatest strategy in order to get to their end goal. So my end goal was to make cash flow. My number plate is cash flow. I love cash flow, and cash flow is great because you just keep getting that cash flow in, you get rid of it, you buy more assets that are going to make you more cash flow, and rinse and repeat. So it was a bit of a system. At the start, I just thought, I wish I could get to 10 properties. I didn't think it was possible. And I talked a bit about this in a previous episode about the motels. And looking at how to build out that strategy is very, very important. So for me, when I first started, it was about getting my first one, but also I never really thought about the property that I was buying on the day, and I never do, right? Out of all the properties that I buy, I am looking at the next property, and I'm looking at the next property, and I'm looking at the next property. So I'm considering, how is this action that I'm going to take going to affect me in 3 or 4 transactions down the track? How is this property, buying it, going to help me? How is it going to hurt me? What is the risk surrounding it? So do I need to buy a property for cash flow? Do I need to buy a property for equity? Do I need to buy a property for growth? How is this property going to help me obtain more finance? How is this property going to help me quit my job? They're all the sort of questions that I had to ask myself along the way. And if I couldn't have the answer to it from looking at that property, then I wouldn't do the deal. So for me, when I first started, I thought, saving up a deposit was cool. Saving up to, buy that property, that's fine. But how many times do I have to keep doing that? And I thought, to start off with, buying a property, paying it down, getting rid of the debt. Everyone told me debt was bad. So I bought my first property, worked 2 jobs, paid it down. I was saving 5%, 7%, 8%, 9% interest at the time. Cool. But nowadays we've got interest at 2% and 3%. It's not even worth saving because it's losing its value constantly. But looking at equity, it wasn't actually something until maybe about 5 properties in, or 3, maybe 4 or 5 properties in, that I realised, or I even had anyone explain to me what equity was and how it works. And that's when I met Rose, actually. Rose, who heads up Zinger Finance. She was my broker, and she said to me, Nathan, you can pull out equity and, use that equity to buy another one. I was like, oh, cool. Can I buy some more? And can I buy some more? And that's sort of how I built my portfolio from there. So nowadays I buy all my properties cash because that's what I've got to do. But at the start, I was using deposit. I was working hard getting a deposit. And then I work smarter by using the equity. And then instead of having a consolidation phase where I paid down the debt, I just realized that I use the cash flow that's coming through to go and obtain more assets, to obtain more assets that are going to get inflated, as well as more cash flow. So, understanding along the way how equity works is really, really important. I could go work 2 full-time jobs, earn $100,000 a year. That's what I did starting off my portfolio, and my whole career I basically worked 2 full-time jobs. I really only worked for about 7 years in a job or in 2 jobs, and I just earned about $100,000 a year, and I took that cash flow and I bought assets, and those assets then build a cash flow so I didn't have to go work, and then that cash flow I used to go and leverage and go and buy more assets, and sort of built my position out from there. So without hard work, it's inevitable, but you can work much smarter. So if I was to go back to the early days, there's some things there that I could have done better via understanding how equity works, understanding how debt works, understanding how to structure it. That's why I talk so much nowadays about debt. Strategy and systems and processes are very important, and I was going to make a specific video on this topic actually, so maybe the editor would like to cut this one out for a specific topic on itself, but looking at processes and systems and procedures, I have people often ask me, Nathan, how do you handle your bills that come in? How do you handle the management of the tenants? I outsource all of that. I don't want to be a property manager. I don't want to speak to a tenant. I don't want the tenant to know I exist, right? Looking at the bills, I often think about this when people ask me, like, how do you do your bills? So I have all of my bills get sent to a specific email. I'm not going to say it because someone's going to sign me up to just spam and screw up my email inbox, but I have a specific email address that's designed for all of my mail to get emailed to for the property. So I have a PA that oversees that. I have all my rental information going there, so if anyone ever wants to access it, I can say, okay, here you go, Mr. Accountant, here you go, Mr. Taxman, here you go, Mr. Broker, or whoever. So it's all in one place. You don't want to be sifting through thousands of emails for the last 10 years trying to find something that's a very important documentation for your property when you can just have it all just emailed into one place. So have an email address that's separate from your email address and get all of your property information sent there. Do all your property transactions from that email address. You will love it in the future. You may be like, oh, well, I've got 2 email addresses now, but it'll severely fix your life up moving forward. Secondly, I don't pay any of my bills myself, so I get the real estate agent to do that. So nowadays that is Blink. I run a property management firm, which I've got really good property managers that manage the assets for me, but I make sure that the property managers cover those bills. So what I mean by that is if you have council, water, strata, insurance, whatever bills that you have, generally these bills are quarterly. Let's say you've got 4 bills and they're quarterly payable. So quarterly you've got to pay your council, quarterly you've got to pay your strata, quarterly you've got to pay your water rates, whatever. You have to sit down. How long would it take you to do a B-pay bill? It might take you, let's call it 2 minutes. You're an expert. You're like, you got bloody fingers you got Twitter fingers, right? And you're typing in these bills and you're getting them done very, very quickly. If I had this, if I have to sit there and type in every single bill, it'll take 2 minutes for, say, 4 bills. So each quarter, that'll take 8 minutes for me to type in the bills. If I have 200 properties, that's 1,600 minutes that would take me to sit there and just type it in. Let's assume that I did a shift of 10 hours in a day, right? 1,600 minutes divided by 60 minutes would be 60. It would be almost 30 hours of me sitting there entering in B-pay billers. And then the next quarter would come around and I'd have to do that same thing again. So I don't want to have to pay my bills. It's just as simple as ticking a box with your property manager and getting the bills sent to them. So everything needs to be systemized and process driven to be time efficient, energy efficient, and not to cloud you up. Because a lot of people spend their time, effort, and energy, sort of doing the wrong things, right? I don't go and renovate all of my properties. I don't want to be a tradesperson. If I did, it'd be too big of a mess. And I think a lot of people get fearful of scaling and getting a big property portfolio because they think of all the little menial tasks. But you got to remember, you're not a handyman. Don't try and be a handyman. You're not an accountant. Don't try and be the accountant. You're not a lawyer. Don't try and be the lawyer. Have the right team of people around you that can help you scale. And processes, systems, and procedures. In total, for myself, I probably have about 500 email addresses or 500 bank accounts. They're all process driven, so bills go in one and come out of another, and etc. etc. So make sure that your property manager does, pay those bills on your behalf, it will make your life a lot easier. So looking at other strategies used to scale that I've had. One was using the equity right, one was having the right team around me, making sure you've got cash flow management in play, make sure you set up your loans correctly and you're getting your financing done right. That's really important, because I see so often people that, I was talking to someone just yesterday, I won't give too much detail away, but I was thinking at the time, like, your broker has just trapped you into a corner by buying you properties with 95% LVR, so only 5% deposit. It keeps you tied to that one bank, so you don't have flexibility to move. Your broker is now, the advice that they've given you by fixing your interest rates has now trapped you to keep with that broker. There's certain little things, if you don't have the right team around you, they will cost you dearly in the future. So you need to make sure that you've got clarity. When I start out on any journey, whether it be my property portfolio, wanting to get to 10, whether it be building out a business, any sort of business, I'll look at the end, I'll look at where I'm at, I'll work out what hurdles will I have, work out a process of how to get there and break it down. What KPIs do I need to achieve for myself? What hurdles are there? What processes I can put in place to minimise any of those sort of problems that could arise? So making sure you got your right finance in place. Having a property manager. I see so many people that try and buy a property and manage it themselves. They try and save $20 per week, right? Your job isn't to be a property manager, right? It takes a lot to be a property manager. I have a property management business that's national, and the headaches that I've seen over the years, the problems with dealing tenants and all that, is very, very process and system-based business. If you can get those systems and processes down pat perfectly, you can minimize all those things. But the thing I find most interesting, though, in dealing with tenants is that having an intermediary is very, very important. So trying to have a tenant, they can contact you, they can whinge to you, they can tie you down and drag you down. That is a hurdle. So I've seen people that have tried to manage their properties, they try and save $20 a week. Wow, you've got 5 properties at $20 a week. You're trapping yourself and trapping your growth to try and save $100 per week. You've done a great job. So, have a good property manager that's going to be there to support you, to do their job correctly. It's not just a matter of taking money off a tenant. It's pushing up the rents. Generally, when I see people with self-managed properties, their properties will be below market rent because the tenant's their friend. They're like, oh, the tenant's a good guy, he's been there for 10 years. Who cares, right? It needs to be run as a business. It needs to be treated like a business. So, stop trying to, cut those corners if that's what you're doing. Dealing with the tenants when they have confrontation, right? Making sure they pay their rent on time, making sure they keep your house in a sound order. Very, very important, because if you're too trapped on, the little tiny things, you're not going to be able to scale. You're not going to be able to grow, because all this stuff's going to be holding you back and being a burden to you. So another thing to look at. Making sure that you've got a good team around you. So it doesn't necessarily need to be your property manager. It could be your mortgage broker. It could be your lawyer. It could be your accountant. It could be your set of trades. I've dealt with trades over the years, and I'm at a point now. This is something that I thought about really recently. If a tradie asks you to pay in cash, I don't want to do business with you, right? It's too much of a hurdle. It's too much of a liability. They're trying to cut corners. They're trying to, I've never really seen someone that's been successful. Tell me, who do you know that's a cashy? Oh, give me a cashy. Who trades in cash and is really successful? I don't know anyone, right? They do all right. They've got some cash. Wow, they can shout you at the pub. But tradies that just want to take the cash and don't want to give you an invoice, one, it creates an accounting nightmare for me, right? Because I don't have fucking invoices. It costs me 30-40% because I can't claim against the invoice. So making sure that you've got good trades around you, they can screw you up big time. I've had tradies try to extort me. I've had tradies try and screw me over. I've had all different types of bad trades over the years, and today I've got a process in place to make sure that I've got right tradespeople. They're going to give me the right outcome at an achievable price and at a reasonable price. that's important. So making sure that all the people that are on your team are there to support you, they're there to support your goals, you're being fair, you're being reasonable. But if you've got a process, no successful business out there goes, oh, let's do a cashy. No successful business out there cuts corners on their processes. You need to have strong process. If you want to scale, you need to have systems in place. Looking at funding, right? There has become times where I've been stuck. One of the things that commonly gets asked is how can you overcome hurdles with finance? So, I've had to sell properties over the years. I've probably sold, I don't know, maybe like 80 properties, 70 properties in the last sort of 18 years of investing. I've sold about 80 properties. So I have sold properties, but I've bought them with a specific reason to sell those properties. So what I mean by that is sometimes I may have found a good deal, right? A really, really good deal, but I couldn't afford it. I couldn't get a loan. I didn't have the capital for it, whatever. So that is the only time I've ever pulled someone to the table and been like, okay, let's buy this property and go halves in it. I don't own any properties with anybody. I don't want to do business like that. It's not how I do, because my goals today are different to my goals in 5 years, and as will the other party. So I have done a few deals where I've bought a property, renovated and sold it, but I bought it specifically for the purpose of renovating it and selling it back in the day. I don't do that anymore. I don't want to do it. It's too much of a headache for me. But at times what that has done and what it's enabled me to do is to make a quick 50 grand. That 50 grand then goes on become the deposit for the next property. So I've had to do it to overcome a hurdle at the time. But it was more in the days when I was acting, harder but not smarter, working harder, not smarter. So how to overcome, you need to look at it holistically and go, okay, why won't the bank give me money? There's only two reasons why the bank won't give you money. One is you don't have a deposit. Two is that the bank, you don't service for the bank. There's many other issues, but generally it comes down to one or two things. You don't have the deposit to buy the property, you don't have the servicing for the property. So you need to determine what you need for the next step. Do I need more capital for deposits? Do I need more cash flow so the bank will service for me? And it's only really understanding how the financing works that you can go, okay, the property I need to buy today needs to perform a task, and that is to boost my cash flow. Or the property needs to perform a task by giving me some quick equity so I can get out of that deal and go to the next one. So financing is probably about 60-70% of the equation. I find good deals every day of the week. That's what I do. That's what I specialize in. That's probably why I think that financing is more important than that. But if we really look at it, it's probably 50% the deal, 50% the finance. Because if you don't have the money to buy the property, you can't do a deal. So you need to get that right. So scaling, having a business plan. When I say business plan, it's like an acquisition plan. That's why I call the MAP session a mentoring acquisition plan. MAP. If anyone ever want to know what it stands for, that's what it is. It's getting you a roadmap to get to where you want to be. But looking at so working out. If you need to have more cash flow for servicing, a lot of people go, well, I can't get a loan, I don't service anymore, I can't buy any more property. It's like, well, okay, well, what screwed that up? Is it firstly because you're earning too little? Is it that you, bought a property that's costing you too much, that's negative? Is it that you've got wrong structuring in your position? Is it because you're doing too many cashies at work, right? What is it that's holding you back? How can you improve on that position, and how can you fix it up? Looking at most people's situations, if your broker says no, you can't service, you can't get another loan, I always want to ask why. Like, how far do I fail servicing? If you can't service and you're listening or watching this, when was the last time you asked your broker, how far do I fail servicing by? You might fail servicing by $200 a month, right? Could be as simple as that. So you might have to go out there and find an extra $50 per week to get you out of that pickle. So that could be pushing up your rentals on 3 other properties by $20 each. They're $60 a week. It could be that you go and speak to your boss and ask for a pay rise. It could be that you just do a little bit more activity in your business and be able to get more money to show to the bank. It could be that you've got 50 grand or 100 grand sitting in your bank account, and you use that capital to go and buy a property cash that rents for $300 a week. So there is properties out there in the country that you can buy for like 100 grand or 80 grand or 70 grand, which rent for $250, $300 a week. You could simply take the cash, buy one of those properties, and then suddenly you've got more cash flow coming through, and when you go back to the bank will be like, well, now you service. It's asking the questions. How can you, the question is how far do I fail servicing by? If it's that you don't have a deposit, well, then you need to look at yourself and go, okay, well, what can I do to get a deposit? You can go and work harder, which will take you 5 years. People just stop at the first answer. People take rejection and don't know how to deal with it in life, and that's a big problem. If getting a job and saving it up is one option, what about selling something? What about leveraging something else you've got? What about borrowing it? What about doing a deal where you can flip? Like I said beforehand, I bought some property, sold the properties, took the cash, used it as a deposit, got on my next deal. What can you do to overcome your hurdle at the moment? Most people just sit there and go, oh, okay, this is all I can do, end of the road. But what can you do to improve it? That's the important thing as well. And probably the last one is looking at, just two-dimensional. A lot of people look at things just two-dimensionally. They're not looking at three-dimensional, fourth-dimensional, fifth-dimensional, sixth-dimensional. They're just looking at things that are tunnel vision. So they go, I need to buy a property in my backyard. I need to buy a property that is a house. I need to buy a property, all these things are emotions. Looking at, diversification is very, very important. So, is there something you can do to improve your cash flow? It may not be property related. It might be setting up a business. It might be flipping things. It might be re-educating yourself around the act of finance. It might be re-educating yourself in any other area. What can you do to overcome that hurdle? People are just stuck with their two-dimensional thinking, and they end up with their two-dimensional results. And it's really important to continuously learn and continuously to ask questions. Every time I get told no, what pisses me off in business, in a day-to-day life, this is a bit of a rant, what pisses me off in life is when people come to me with a problem and they don't have a solution. Because it's like, oh, well, this is a problem. So what do you want me to do about it? Tell me the solution. We'll have an option there. So, if everybody's walking around just with a problem but never having a solution, well, then that's half the problem, right? If you've got a problem in your life, work out ways of solution. What is it that's holding you back? You have to start with questioning. How can you prevent a problem from occurring? Is that you have processes, you have systems, you have procedures, you have structure with your investing. With my personal property portfolio, I started off with a very humble, simple plan of getting 10 properties. The properties had to meet a certain criteria. Nowadays, that criteria has turned into 10 different things, but depending on the illness that someone has is dependent on the treatment that they receive. Depending on your financial position is depending on the course of action that you should be taking in order to get over that. And being able to, manage that cash flow, manage that equity, managing the finance, managing the structure of the acquisitions and portfolio is really, really crucial. I always talk to people about treating their property journey like a business, right? Have a business plan, have structuring like a business would have, be disciplined like a business. Really, really important. So if you want to scale, you need to have processes, need to have systems, need to have procedures. It involves a great team. It's bigger than one person. And it has a multi-dimensional, sort of mindset. Having a two-dimensional mindset, just looking at one thing and having one way of thinking, is going to have a limited outcome. I see so many times people come to us and go, I want to have this type of property, I want to have this. It's like, that's great. I want to have fucking 50 Lamborghinis parked in my driveway and have chicks standing on the bonnets of all the cars, right? That's great. It sounds great. But how is it realistically going to happen, right? What efforts are you going to put in place in order to get those 50 Lamborghinis into your front yard in the first place? Be realistic. Look at the actions that you need to take in order to get to the result. I don't even know why I said that as an analogy, but it sounded funny in my head. On that note, guys, if you need help with structuring your portfolio, reach out to us. 1300 367 925. Hit us up, admin@binvested.com.au. If you have any questions, post them below. And as always, we'll be out every Tuesday. You can hit us up on Apple, Google, and Spotify, and always at YouTube, youtube.com/B.Invested. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really